Hi, Dr. Jane.
Hi, Anna. How are you?
I'm doing well, very well. And I know that we spoke last time about doing this one particular technique today that we were going to focus on, like turning toward or just turning toward and going into our thoughts that, sometimes may be difficult and can be somewhat painful at times.
Yes, Anna. And these are very often the thoughts that stir things up, um, really get us into reactivity. I call them kind of crunchy thoughts. We very often have these kind of nice, smooth, easy, enjoyable thoughts, but we can also have these kind of like crunchy, rough places, and they can also be painful. And very often these are the thought patterns that either keep us in reactivity even when we try not to engage them. Sometimes they go underneath and kind of work kind of below the surface, really keeping things stirred up, really keeping things, tense and whirling. And so this is about facing what is real and doing it in a way that I'm not going to engage it. I'm not going to jump in and fuel it. I'm merely going to watch it as we did with the thoughts and the sounds. So it's about moving into that place where I can be with whatever is happening in my life and maintain a certain grounding so that I can decide how best I might deal with it
Yeah.
in a responsive way rather than a reactive way.
Right. And I think that reactivity in these types of circumstances, when we're having those thoughts that aren't necessarily the most pleasant ones and thoughts that you wouldn't necessarily want to think about, but you sometimes do anyways, they just kind of come up. And sometimes they surprise you at times
Mm-hmm.
when they come up. So this is
Yeah.
a technique that I think that people will find very, very useful.
Yes. Because for many of us, when we get into negativity, we get into a pattern that we call rumination, where we go over it again and again and again. So it keeps things stirred up. And as we mentioned in our series, the body believes everything we think. So if I'm keeping my thoughts stirred up, then my body's in constant stress and turmoil. Yeah, yeah.
Makes total sense. So, all right,
Let's
let's
go.
give it a try.
Go. Okay. So let's just go to our breath, settling into a comfortable position, a dignified posture, not crossing any of our extremities. And let's go to our breath, always being with our breath exactly as we find it. Noticing the pace of the in-breath and the out-breath. Noticing our response, our body's response to the in-breath and the out-breath. And this is really allowing the breath to be just as it is. And as we move into our sensing and our contact, it's also about allowing our bodies and the sensing and the contact sensations that we find to be just as they are. Just as they are. Moving our attention now with our breath to the bottoms of our feet and the tops of our feet. And then to our ankles, from our ankles to our knees, taking in the lower legs. Nice, easy observation. Whatever is there, allowing it to be just as it is. Knees to hips, our upper legs, noticing contact surface contact, clothing, furniture, across our bottoms, into our trunks, the back of the torso, lower, middle, upper back to our shoulders, and the front of the trunk, our lower abdomen, diaphragm, chest up to the shoulders. Just observing as we attend to sensations as we find them. And now from our shoulders to our fingertips, just breathing as we move our attention to the sensations and contact, full expanse of our arms, our hands, our palms, our fingers. Just breathing and noticing. And our neck now balancing our head, moving our attention to the back of the head, across the nape of the neck, the occipital lobe, that lovely curve up to the crown, and the sides of the head, across the back of the jaws, across the ears and temples to the crown, and the front of the head, the face, the tilt of the chin, noticing any tension around the jaws, mouth, or tongue. Just noticing that, just breathing into that area as we move our attention up the face, across the cheekbones and nose, across the eyes and eyelids, the eyebrows, noticing that space between the brow that sometimes furrows, all the way up across our foreheads to the crown. And moving our attention now from the crown all the way down the body again, breathing as we move to each part of the body, back down to the bottoms of our feet and back again. We have this sensation that we're breathing with our body in its totality, in its completeness. Feeling ourselves as sensory beings, the aliveness. And then noticing the sounds around us, letting them come to us, staying with the quality of the sounds. Noticing how your thoughts may want to enter in and make commentary, and as best you can, stay with being in your sensory self and noticing the sounds, the loudness, the softness, the frequency, the spaces between sounds. And how they show up seemingly out of nowhere. Just like our thoughts. Observing the sounds. And now moving our attention to our thoughts. Like sounds, they come up spontaneously. The thought stream. So allowing ourselves to be by that moving river or stream and watching our thoughts as leaves, flowing, ever dynamic, ever moving. Or we can see ourselves gazing at the sky, watching the clouds move again dynamically across the sky of the mind. Our thoughts as clouds, all shapes and sizes, some light and fluffy, some storm clouds. Just allowing ourselves to watch the movement We are the observer. Are standing back from the tracks, watching the train go by. Our mind that runs 24/7, often at breakneck speed. Each compartment filled with different themes and agendas, past, present, and future. Just being with whichever one of those scenarios feels most you in this moment. Staying with it, watching our thoughts. And you might notice that sometimes a painful thought or a thought that triggers a certain negative reactivity shows up. And these tend to be enormously seductive. They want to pull us in. And if something arises, just noticing that, and as best you can, allow yourself to maintain your position as the observer. And yet turning toward that painful piece, that negative piece, that difficult piece, that thought that really wants to engage us in reactivity. Turning toward that, breathing into it, and allowing ourselves, even saying to ourselves silently, wow, how about that? This feels tough. This really wants me in, but I'm okay. Even though this is difficult, I'm okay being right here watching it. It's all right. And also now, noticing where any reactivity might be showing up in your body as you stand with this difficult, painful reaction, kind of producing thought. Notice where it shows up in your body. Very often there's a tightness in our chest or in our stomach or any place in our muscular system, or a fluttering in the stomach area or in our throat. Just noticing and breathing into that area. Kind of allowing yourself to move from the actual thoughts and noticing where the reactivity is in your body. And if it all gets to be overwhelming, remember that you can always come back to solely focusing on your breath, your in-breath and your out-breath, and your body's response to it. But as best you can, observe the difficult thoughts moving by without engaging, as best you can without engaging, and noticing and breathing into where your body is responding. Remember that the body believes everything we think. Our bodies don't know that these are merely mental events. They're merely clouds moving by, leaves moving down the stream, train just passing by. Our bodies believe they're real. And our thinking convenes around the realness of the thoughts. But as we watch them, even the difficult ones, we can begin to disengage in a way that we can be more neutral and more of an observer. These thoughts are mental events moving dynamically. And again, if it comes to a place where it feels overwhelming, come back to solely focusing on your breath, your inhale and your exhale. But as best you can, stay with the thoughts, telling yourself that it's all right. It's uncomfortable, but I can do this. I'm okay. I'm really very okay. And now, as we leave the practice, allowing the thoughts to fade into the background and focusing on our breath. The inhale, the exhale. Noticing that we can still experience the sensing of our bodies from the bottoms of our feet to the top of our heads as we breathe. And moving more and more into just the breath. Just the breath, the inhale and the exhale. And when you're ready, blink your eyes open. How about that?
How about that?
Yeah.
That was wonderful.
It's really interesting, I find, how that lead-in of focusing on the sounds, which are very spontaneous, we have no control over that, is such a parallel to how thoughts arise spontaneously. We don't have a lot of choice about that either, but
Yes.
it's what we do next that counts.
Yeah,
Do
and
I get in there and rumble with them, or do I allow them to keep passing by? Yeah.
one of the things I noticed during even doing it this time around with you, because I do this technique on my own, but having you guide me through the meditation, it really helped me like feel where in my body I was carrying like tension or
Yes.
whatever it be. And I noticed that today it was a lot in my jaw. And
Uh-huh.
when you say relax the tongue, you don't realize how often we tense up. Like a lot of people get like neck and shoulder pain from tensing up and that sort of thing. But sometimes we don't realize the alignment of our jaws and our where the tongue sits, on the roof of our mouth. Or I mean,
You're absolutely right. You're
it's crazy.
absolutely right, Anna. Yeah, and it's interesting because the tongue is one of the strongest muscle groups of the body. And unless it is relaxed and lying in a relaxed position in the call it the tooth bed
Right.
in our mouth, very often we're going to be producing tension elsewhere in the body. I've never met a person who has neck and shoulder tension and neck and shoulder pain, but what they don't have, jaw tension and tongue tension in particular. Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're on it.
Yeah.
You're on it.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you, Anna.